Let me introduce myself first. My name is Dalia. I work as a community manager here on the developer marketing team at Kong. So welcome to all of you who are joining us live today. We have some questions already prepared, which our developer relations team will answer. But please, if you have anything you want answer to, drop it in the chat or in the Q&A function, and we will answer those as well. So as you know, today we have a little bit different format than what we have usually we have a presentation, but today we're going a little bit more casual, more interactive session. It will be an MAA with all of our developer relations team, and it will be focused on Kong Gateway. So before we deep dive into the questions, I wanted to mention that our Kong Summit Hackathon is now live. So if you want to submit any contributions and you want to participate, we encourage you to do so. We have really amazing awards this time. We have limited edition t-shirt, which you can win. And we have several other prizes for the first few winners. So go ahead and enroll and participate. Here you can see the link where you can go, and I will also put it in the chat if you want to check it out. And with that, let's open it up for the questions. We have a few questions submitted through our form, so let's go ahead and answer those first. All right, that's the first one. Any volunteers?
Yeah, Dalia, so I can take this one.
Awesome.
So the question is, what would be the tips for someone currently doing mostly engineering, but interested in DevRel as well? And so I did spend a number of years in traditional engineering and engineering management before doing this dev relations kind of work. And so for me, what really got me going that direction was I found something I was interested in. And once I found something that I was interested in, the idea of learning it deeply and then teaching others kind of came naturally for me. For me in particular, it was really learning something that helped me with the engineering role at work. So I worked in finance, and there was a particular back office data project that needed to be done. And I learned Apache Kafka, and Apache Kafka was super interesting to me because it was perfectly applied to the problem. And so I wanted to dive deeply into it. And that's how I became interested in learning it very well. And the second step I took was I kind of begged and pleaded with my team leaders to send me to a conference. So I went to a conference and met all of the thought leaders in the space, introduced myself, went to the parties, got to know people. This was really huge for me.
It's good that you mentioned this, Rick. There's one good conference coming about APIs and API ops and stuff.
There is a conference coming up that you all should attend if you're interested in APIs, for sure, which I am. And the conferences are great, not only for like learning the actual technology of what you're interested in, but I learned a lot of ancillary technologies at the conferences that I've been to as well. So for instance, I might have been learning about event stream processing, but I learned how to use, let's say, Elasticsearch for search, and that fit well into a separate problem at work. So it really became super useful, just meeting people and talking about different technologies while I was at the conference. What else did I do? So then when I came back from the conference, I really wanted to apply these problems in production. And so I became an internal advocate at the company. So I would host lunch and learns, sit with people at their desks and teach them what I learned and brought home from the conference. And so really like practice becoming an internal advocate for the ideas, and use that almost to convince leadership of my company to apply the technologies, to become paying customers of it. And so that was kind of like a mini DevRel role within the organization itself. So that was super useful. And then I think that I like to write. So writing is something that I found very useful. Most of my writing was internal to the company, but I did a lot of it. So I would just start writing about anything related to the thing that I wanted to learn, that I wanted to be focused on. And if you can write about it, you can talk about it. And then if you can talk about it and write about it, you can probably do developer relations work. You already likely have the engineering chops, so you just kind of hone those other skills, and it can kind of happen that way. I think it's really boils down to writing, learning, meeting people, getting your name out, joining the communities that the companies provide. There's tons of Slack channels out there. More than likely, the technology you're interested in has some sort of community forum you can get on and to meet people and to join user calls like this, community calls, and any sort of community related activities can just get your name in front of people to help you get known and be involved in the communities of the technologies.
That's
I think
awesome.
that covers it.
Yeah.
I think it's a very good point that Rick mentioned in the very beginning. Sorry for chiming in because I'm going to be doing this a lot. Rick clearly identified his why he was interested in doing. So for yourself, when you're thinking about this, you need to figure out why you want to do this. Rick is good on writing. Rick is good on explaining things to people and learning new technologies. For him, it was clear path that he wants. Maybe he also was bored of doing engineering jobs and he wanted to sharpen his communication skills and people skills in learning something beyond the technology. Pro tip, that's even more important than technology. Technology come and go. Usual cycle of technology is 4 or 5 years. There's something new coming every 4 or 5 years. You need to relearn yourself. But if you have a very strong communication skills, people skills, and skills, what we call soft skills, what the people call soft skills, right? Then this is something that you can continue to master. And technology, if you're naturally curious and naturally wants to share the knowledge, not withhold knowledge. I know many people have a job security by withholding knowledge. I think that's not the right way to approach your career. And with DevRel, it's your job security. Basically, it's you constantly learning something and you constantly teaching, and people know how to approach you. I just want to do one quick plug. I came prepared for the show. So when I started doing DevRel myself, there was no such book, but now there is such book. It's called a business value of developer relations. 75% that you have about DevRel and how to transition from engineering to DevRel, you can find the answers in this book. So highly recommend. Mary Tringwell, great author, put a lot of stuff in writing. Highly recommend to learn. Read this book, pick up this book, and understand like if you want to pursue this type of endeavor.
Thank you.
Yeah, the other thing I would add, just one more addition too, is I think in my personal opinion, DevRel is a wide concept. A lot of people think of developer advocacy or developer relations as the individuals that go to conferences and speak. And I think that it's a much broader idea than that. You can be one of those individuals, and some people thrive with those ideas, but you also can be an advocate for the product itself, back to engineering, back to the product organization, and try to help mold the way that the product or the project goes on behalf of the developers that you're advocating for. So I kind of think of that as internal advocacy. And I find that really interesting because you can really have an impact on the projects and the products that are built.
Yeah, agreed. Both equally important. And I think that kind of leads us to the next question, which is, what is the most meaningful to you about being in DevRel at Kong?
I'll take that one as well. So yeah, it's definitely connected to the first one. And for me, I think all of us would have different answers to this, of course. And so maybe others would want to chime in. But for me, it boils down to being interested in the technology, which is really useful for the first question. If you're interested in the technology, then learning it's going to be easier. Wanting to go to conferences and hearing people speak about it is going to be easier. So for me, Kong is in a space that I find interesting, but also I'm very new to. So I'm learning along with what I might consider my audience or the people that I'm trying to advocate for. So it's kind of helpful to be able to come to technologies very green and learn along with who you're trying to help. So I think that for me personally, it's meaningful because I'll be able to advocate well for developers internally who want to use Kong and be successful with it, because I can come to it with the same let's just say, lack of knowledge that they might have, but apply my previous engineering experiences to it to try to help make the projects and the products better. So for me personally, it's really about that. I'm interested in the space, but I'm also like have this huge circle to grow into of things that I just don't know.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm going to take that as well. So for me, I really, like Rick said, am naturally curious and passionate about tech, but I also really like to tell stories. So sometimes the technology is the fascinating component that we focus on, but a lot of times we also want to tell that in context of where you're going with the technology. Why are you using the technology? And it has to be useful in some tangible way to humans in general, usually, right? And I love telling those stories. And the other piece that I really enjoy is the eureka moments. So when somebody is trying to accomplish something new or do something in a different way just to see if it can be done, and that light bulb moment goes off, that is when I just get really excited about what I do. So I try to be kind of that first customer for Kong. If we release a new feature or something that I'm working with, I want to come at it from that point of empathy so that then I can help someone else along the exact same journey or similar journeys to reach that exciting moment of, aha, eureka, I found it, right?
Awesome. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Rick. Let's move on to the next question. It's a little bit more technical. Who will take this?
Oh, wow. So it's straight from DevRel straight to the technical question.
This is one that I can probably take. So this is a long question, but Kong allows you to generate a Kong configuration file from an OpenAPI spec. The question is the documentation about all of the OpenAPI extensions to configure all the plugins, in particular for complex plugins like OIDC, that's OpenID Connect. And also with the aim to manage the whole Kong configuration from a spec file is the way to configure global scope for plugins. I'm going to take the second one because it's the easy answer. The answer is no, not today. That's because your OpenAPI spec defines a service. It defines all the endpoints, the routes, the behavior. So you can configure plugins at the service level or at the root level through OpenAPI spec, but not globally for your whole Kong installation. For the question about configuring all the plugins, yes, we've got documentation for every single plugin that Kong offers. The xkong plugin prefix that you write in your OpenAPI spec, whatever you use as the end, so it could be xkong plugin keyauth. What you put under there is exactly the same as you put in a Kong declarative configuration file. So if you go to docs.konghq.com/hub, then choose a plugin, there's a little tab in there that says declarative configuration, and it will give you a complete example for what you can put in your OpenAPI file.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, that's the next one. Any volunteers?
I can try.
Okay.
So API gateway and authentication chain. So that's the question generally. I'd like to know how to configure Kong gateway to manage an authentication chain. In my case, the same API is protected both by API key and JWT bearer managed by an OIDC plugin. So actually this one, I don't know.
I do know this
Thank
one.
Thank you, Michael.
So this is a common use case actually. And Kong added support a little while back for something called an anonymous consumer. And the anonymous consumer is the one that's attached to a request if no other consumers match. So you can't say run with the consumer or run without. You've always got to run with the consumer. But you can set this anonymous one, which is the default. And what that allows you to do is attach the API key plugin or the JWT plugin to specific consumers, and that's how they identify themselves. And if neither of those are triggered, if no consumers match the credentials that have been provided, the anonymous consumer will run. Now, by default, that would just let them through to the service, through to your upstream. But if you take the request termination plugin and attach that to the anonymous consumer, you can return a response that says 401 unauthorized, and they won't be able to call your upstream. So if someone uses an API key, it matches their consumer. If someone uses a JWT, it matches a different consumer. And if not, it falls back to the anonymous one, and the request is terminated with a 401.
So this is a good example of how one person might not know all the answers, but we have a team of people, and it's always great. It's a part of being the DevRel team where we have a different set of skills and different set of knowledge and different set of expertise. One of the things that Rick mentioned when he was talking about engineering background, I don't have engineering background personally. I came from the customer-facing roles, consultancy, and all things with professional services and implementation. It's somehow engineering. Okay, I'm a little bit, but in this role, I more seen like customers code, but not production code, and customer use cases versus use cases that some of the product leads will put this thing. So having this kind of experience with the product and having experience from as a user, for example, feels like Michael done things like that in the past, being as a user. So he knows exactly what he's talking about, because clearly he's not maybe like developer of the gateway. Maybe even developers of gateway doesn't know the answer. However, having the group of people who can contribute and get the answer, that's the big part of the DevRel.
Very well said. Nice pick.
Please stay for more career advices and on this live stream or this webinar. Yes.
And thank you, Michael, for the answer.
No worries. Sorry, before we move on, there's one that's coming live. Do we want to do that one first?
Yes, sure. Let me just open it. How do you measure your success is the question.
Can I answer this one?
Go ahead.
I have a tweet. I tweeted about this just last week about when the people asking how we measure DevRel, how we measure success. First of all, I'm answering indirectly. When you try to measure something, you obviously will optimize your work around this. So when you're picking up metric for your success, you need to understand that this metric you will be using to optimize your work. So that's why I choose wisely. If you're using vanity metric as your success, like number of retweets, number of engagements, so you will be optimizing everything for this particular thing. Success is actually, as for us as a team at Kong, is essentially developer acquisition. How many people would use Kong, regardless if people using enterprise version of Kong or open source version of Kong. And it's simply because I can be completely honest about this. If people not using Kong open source, they're using something else. And this is already lost for Kong, even though if it's not a paying customer, DevRel team usually not incentivized by sale or any other like sales related metric. So our success when the people using our tools and being successful using our tool. So we're trying to optimize on the metrics that's called time to Kong. And this is where Rick can take a little bit more and talk a little bit about how we're optimizing this one.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it because I wasn't prepared to talk about it, but I agree with you. The traditional quote unquote off the shelf metrics of DevRel performance, I think they're interesting, but they're imperfect. And there's a large debate about their efficacy. And I don't really have a super strong opinion one way or the other. I think you measure the best that you can, and we don't have perfect measurements of something that's hard to measure. So I think what we've done at Kong and we're working on is really interesting, is an idea that was generated before I arrived, but this idea of time to Kong I think is super interesting because it's focused on Kong specifically. And so can we measure how quickly someone can get from zero to an aha moment about how to solve their problem? If we can measure that and then improve it, and then measure it again and know that we've made an advancement, then I think that that's really cool. And, it may not show up in a GitHub star, but we know at least for one case, we've made someone's life better and easier. And I think that collecting enough of those over time will be meaningful for us. Whether or not those kind of percolate up to management or the company at a higher level is hard to say, but I think that we're doing our jobs by making individual stories easier, developers' lives better. So that's why I really like that. I'm glad you brought that up, Victor. And I think it's a powerful idea that we're just starting to kind of scratch. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how it works.
Yes, actually, all props goes to Udi for this question. Thank you so much for asking this.
And thank you both for answering. Let's move on to the next question. Any volunteers?
I think this is the one we saw before that Michael and I talked about. And so I'll read it here. Is there a possibility to route clients, customers to a different upstream service based on assigning a quality of service policy? For example, I'd like to route API calls coming from my top clients to a high performing upstream, and then my low profile or low paying customers to a cheaper upstream. How can I achieve such a configuration? And so we talked about this briefly before the call, and we had a couple ideas. Michael, please chip in whenever. But I think the two ideas we came up with was obviously a custom plugin could be written for this, and it would probably be straightforward to achieve the specific goal. Kong provides a plugin development kit that allows you to write a solution that runs in the same language and the same technologies, or using non-native like Lua technology, languages to write a plugin. So you have some options there to write a specific business case solution. So that would be option A. Option B might be to chain together multiple Kong plugins, Kong provided plugins to solve the problem. So maybe we could do this by creating a request transformation plugin for a consumer and add a header. And let's say we added a quality of service header to a request based on the consumer. Maybe would give them a tier assignment header of like gold or bronze or whatever, and then chain that together with a route by header plugin, which could then route to the upstream based on the presence of that tier header. This might have been more challenging before the latest versions of Kong, where plugins had static priorities, but Kong 3.0 released the idea of dynamic plugin ordering. And so we can change the plugin priorities dynamically based on configuration. So this might even be more achievable now with Kong 3.0. But that's about the extent I know. I haven't tried to actually piece together a solution to the question, but that's the route I would take to try to figure it out.
So one thing that you can also do to augment those kinds of workflows is identify, say, a bearer token or something like that, and associate that with a specific consumer. And so you can have two different consumers going potentially to two different routes or not routes, services on the back end, pointing to your different, high performance or low performance. And another thing that you can do with that is attach different rate limits or things like that to those different consumers as well. I don't know, Michael, if you had other things to add.
Not actually about solving the problem, but this is a great example of what DevRel is. It's not just getting up on stage and shouting about technologies. It's about hearing use cases from customers and going, oh, actually, I don't know how to do that, but let me go and find out. And working out how you can use all the different moving parts of the systems that you have to achieve an outcome. Like it's already been said, like the technology is important, but consumers being successful is the key thing. So I love getting questions like this because I know the team is going to be tinkering away to make this work, just for their own interest.
One of the things.
Another part.
Yep, go ahead.
Another part of that story, like where we are being that first customer and discovering, okay, how do we piece it all together to answer this problem? we're looking to see, we're testing our own documentation, we're testing our plugins, and making sure that if we put ourselves in your shoes, do we have everything it takes to achieve that outcome? So we're testing more than just the product. We're doing more than just promoting it. We're actually testing to see if common people have everything they need to achieve what we say is possible with Kong.
One of the things that I learned during my professional services career is not about giving you answer immediately, because when I see questions like this, I have more questions, and my personal mental model for approaching this type of problems, before I give you answer, I would like to have clarified questions in order to understand if I understand your question correctly. So the favorite thing to illustrate this type of approach would be from The Princess Bride, when the Mandy Patinkin character was saying, like, using this word, but do you really know what it means? So in this case, we need to make sure that what this person is asking is exactly how I understand the problem, because he might, or they might have different understanding of how this quality of service attribute will be measured. Maybe it would be something that based on something like an API key that we were providing, and in this case, we don't need to think much, because we can use a combination of the plugins, and we don't need to opt in for custom plugin. So there's many things. One of the qualities that we need to, or like people who want to join the DevRel team, they need to learn, is to resist the urge, give you first answer that you have in mind. Just like take a second. Imagine it's I'm more like on the basketball side of things, but it's also applicable to any team sports. Before you're doing a shot for the basket, you're doing 3 passes. Just have 3 questions in your mind about this. Just clarify the questions. Make the person who asking the question talk a little bit more in order to clarify this. Assumption is the worst thing that, as a consultant or any type of customer-facing people might have. It's the worst enemy of yours if you assuming too much. You should not leave the room for assumptions if you want to provide successful response. A DevRel is about relationship, so it's not about giving you immediate answer, but it's the way where you can get back with the questions once you establish trust. And in order to establish trust, we need to win your trust by providing you assurance that the things that you asking will be answered, and you will get the legitimate and the clear and concrete answer. But it usually requires few iterations. So do not assume. Remember a rule of 3 passes. Like just like throw 3 more questions before you actually shoot for the. Unless you know that's immediate slam dunk, so just do it immediately if you know exactly. But again, it's good to take a pause and reassess situation rather than just like shooting from the hip.
Thank you, Vic. I love the little
I
background.
like the finger guns there.
Shooter McGavin. But write down in the comments if you remember Happy Gilmore movie.
All right, here's the next question.
Yes, I can answer this one.
Oh, go on, Vic.
Go ahead, Vic.
Yes, so platform infrastructure technology feels like it's evolving faster than I keep up with it. How do you keep up and learn about new things that you need to know? That's perfect. That's actually our alley. We need to, keep up and learning the things. I have another movie reference, usually when I talk about this, but I will keep this to myself because it's I don't know if it's like a PG-13 or this type of kind of like age restriction movie. I don't remember what was the rating, but I have a good thing. So essentially, if you love something, it would be not a problem for you to keep up. Like if you love your kids, you are never get tired, even though they make you tired like all the time. Never get tired of learning something new for them. And the same with technology. If you genuinely passionate about something, you will continue looking. You'll start reading blogs, reading podcasts, and the best way how you can learn things and start teaching other people, answering the question. And that's essentially one of the misconceptions that people have. Oh, how I can teach something if I don't know much? spoiler alert, not many people were experts from the get-go. People just spend the time. It's only time. In order to become expert in something, it's only time that you can do this. There is some talent things involved. For example, you have a good memory and you have, I don't know, like a good memory of the text or good memory of the pictures, but you need to keep this thing to do, you need to keep doing this thing in order to this talent become your expertise. Same thing with technology. Pick up something that is somehow relevant to you, and if you want to continue to follow some of the people in industry, like follow some of the blog platforms where the people are posting the responses for different technologies. Do something yourself. Do not afraid to fail. It's also important. That's why I'm doing Kong builders. I don't have a time to learn technology every time, so I'm making a commitment that every week or every 2 weeks I will go and teach you something that I learned for the past week or maybe before. Something that for you feels like, oh, it's nothing, maybe would be a lot for some other person. So always share the knowledge. When you're learning something yourself and teaching someone and explaining someone, that's going to be a process.
I really like this one too. So one of the things that I've found success with really boils down to like an almost immersion approach. I am not probably in most scenarios going to sit down and study something to master it for a given week or for several hours at a time. I may find myself working on a problem for that amount of time, but it's going to involve lots of different pieces across the platform stack and possibly testing different pieces that perform the same function. And the only way that I know to have enough understanding, and it's really like, what is the bare minimum of understanding required to achieve those successes on demand, is to really have regular but bite-sized engagement. For me, it works best to have a lot of different mediums. So I might watch a couple YouTube videos on the weekend from creators that I like who are dabbling in a new technology or something that I'm interested in. I love to skim through blogs. So the algorithms kind of start generating content that it learns that you like, and that's worked really well for me to be coming across blog posts and articles about things that are coming out or new features that I might be interested in. But I don't necessarily study any one thing incredibly deeply until I need to use it. I just want to know enough to understand what I need to pull off of the shelf to bolt together or build something, kind of like a bunch of different Legos. So just understand enough about the pieces to know if you're going to need to select them in the future.
You've taken the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, develop your filter, which is, hugely valuable. Right.
Let's go for the full spectrum here, because Vic was very, be immersed, follow people in the community. Cat is be aware, then learn as you need it. I tend to do things that I didn't know I needed to do this morning because someone says, hey, can we have this thing? And my response is generally, sure, I don't know how to do it, but I will. And it's that just-in-time learning. It's never exactly how you should do it. It's never done as well as someone that really invests the time to be an expert in the ecosystem could do it. But it's 70% there, and it works. The reason I'm sharing this is don't feel like you've got to constantly be reading, be learning, be investing time. It is also okay to say, I don't have time for that. I've got other commitments, but I am capable of learning as and when I need it. So that's how I keep up. I went from never using Kubernetes to having all kinds of things deployed in about 3 days. And actually, Vic came along and said, oh, thanks for setting this up. I learned about Locust, which is a load testing tool, as part of that. I just love the just-in-time. That's how you keep up with what you need to do, not things that you think you might need to know.
Oh, and the last and most important piece, give yourself time to breathe. Like, walk away from technology sometimes, because you're never going to thoroughly learn enough about anything to be successful if you're constantly burnt out. So go outside or do a hobby that you like. Also do not tech things sometimes.
Yeah, go to gym.
Very
One
important.
point that Kat mentioned that throw me idea when she said like do bite size. Hackathons are fantastic medium to learn things. They are usually time bound. They usually like very limited or in scope. This is the way we can learn, and the Kong Summit Virtual Hackathon is a great place to do this type of stuff. This is how I learning. Like in a matter of weeks, I learned how to write the plugins in Go. We're gonna be doing the plugins in Lua for Kong. If not for the Kong hackathon, I don't know when I would be, find the time to learn about this. That's, people doing their hack stuff. And I also feel that I need to be involved in this one and providing all sorts of pointers for participants of the hackathon. So they also, will do something awesome. So yeah, participate in hackathon. You might learn something new that you never knew that you needed, or will find appreciation for some technology that you never used.
Thank you. And the link to the hackathon is in the chat if anyone is interested to check it out. Let's move on. All right. I've watched Kong webinars and live streams, but they don't go too deep enough into the technology for me. How can I learn more?
Where I should begin.
Cat is muted.
Yeah, I was muted. I'm sorry. I'm going to piggyback on what Victor said.
Yeah.
Hackathons are a great opportunity because we want to support you in your hackathon endeavors. So definitely jump in on that. Also, I'm going to drop the link in the chat for our education portal. We have free and paid courses that take you deeper into the practice of Kong for production or other aspects of API ops and API development. So definitely take a look at that if you want to get further than where we go in our webinars and live streams. But also, if you want more content about a specific feature or a specific use case or something like that, we love suggestions. So pipe up and ask questions when we're on, or request, future content about different things, whether that's blogs or live streams, whatever kind of content you feel like it makes sense. We love to hear what works for you and what you want to know more about.
So the story with the webinars and live streams, they're kind of interesting because we're trying to cover like general the population about certain things. So that's why it's very difficult if you do like general webinar go very deep enough, because in this case, these deep use cases might be maybe 10% of the users who use Kong. There are legitimate and honorable use cases, very technically deep, but most of the time, people want to just get started and doing something done. So that's why it's very important for us to understand to what is important for you as a user, as a developer, as architect, as a user of technology. So again, feedback is important. Kat mentioned this. Feedback is very important. Find you watch the live stream, you want to go a little bit deeper, to write down in the comment, say, I love this topic. On the minute 32, you talk about these kind of things. Whenever you will be planning the next content, what would you be interested to do something like deeper in this topic? And that's basically how we can learn. So in this case, we know that, okay, yeah, there was a request. There would be some thumbs up on this request, meaning that many people actually interested in this type of topic. So that allows us to kind of prioritize some of the things. So give us feedback. I'm keep my DMs in Twitter open, but keep your feedback, the direct and the like what exactly you want to know. Like you can say that it's not deep enough, or there's no enough technical information. Be specific. Saves others time as well. So
And you please always feel free to send us an email to community@konghq.com with any suggestions or topics you want to hear about.
I just wanted to add one quick comment and take 30 seconds. You know, webinars and live streams are great, and of course so is documentation. But technology is so complex, and every business case is different that it's impossible to build answers to every question that could possibly exist. And so the answer to this question for me is to learn by doing, and to actually set out within a goal to achieve a particular thing. And the best way to learn is to go do it. And then you can come to webinars and live streams with the pointed questions that you can't solve through the traditional media, and get answers to your questions. So my answer to this is just go do the thing that you need to do. And that's the fastest way to learn.
Yeah. Great. Thank you, Rick. And next one. Anyone wants to take this one?
I'm going to sound like a broken record. But the hackathon is a great answer for this one. We're not being told we have to say this, but like Vic mentioned earlier, we're here to help you. So if you've got an idea of what you want to build, but you're not sure where to start, or you get stuck on a specific thing, let us know. You can send a tweet to the Kong Inc. We've all got personal Twitter accounts. You can email us DevRel@konghq.com. Just reach out, say, hey, I'm trying to do this, but I'm stuck, because chances are, if you are, so are 10 other people, so are 100 other people, and we want to help all of you.
This is where I think like Victor's YouTube channel would be super powerful for inspiration. Personally, I think that like watching him develop something in real time or a recorded video can be inspiring to apply to the business case you've got. So anyway, I just wanted to chip that in. I think that those kinds of things are super powerful for inspiration, right?
I wanted to point out one important thing, that when it's similar with feedback, we want your feedback and we're ready for your feedback. It's not like we asking for feedback only it's not like I need to be liked. It's not like my compulsive reaction or desire to be praised or whatnot. So I'm not going to go in the full Michael Scott here. But when we're asking for feedback, we really want to have your feedback. And but when you're asking for help, you also need to accept the points of help, because sometimes people asking for the help, but only think what they do is complain, which is also kind of fair reaction. And being in this industry for a while and understanding like some human emotion, as Kat mentioned, like we can empathize with this emotion. So that's why for us it's a part of the job to help you to help to get help. So whenever you're asking for something, we also expect, if you asking the question back, we're expecting you to answer those questions, and there should be something kind of like a back and forth continuous things or like, oh yeah, that was super helpful, thank you so much for your help, and like we move on to next question. So we really want to help, but also you also needed that we will provide you help, if it makes sense.
And augmenting like email and Twitter. We're on Kubernetes Slack in the Kong channel. We have a forum, Kong Nation, discuss.konghq.com. So there are plenty of ways to reach out as well.
Thank you all. I think that might be the last question now. Does anyone from Kong does Kong have anyone who can help me if I want to submit a CFP including Kong products, but I don't know who to write to or submit a proposal? Yes, I believe we can help with that. Kat, do you want to talk a little bit more on that? And Victor?
Okay,
yes.
So CFP, that's if you're wanting to submit a talk or something like that to a conference, we are definitely excited if you're interested in including Kong products in your talk or in your solution that you're presenting. So all of the ways that we've shared to get in contact with us, reach out, and we would love to help you write and edit your CFP, your call for a proposal. So, Victor?
One of the things that I also would like to mention, because I was participating in a few program committee for some of the conferences in the past, and I have some experience on writing some of the proposals and submitting those proposals, and most importantly, some of those proposals, some of the top proposals were accepted. So maybe I know a few things about this. The few practical tips. So when you're writing your proposal, it needs to be really clear what you want to talk about this. Many people found some weird templates, I don't know, from all over the places internet, that use very interesting the words like a synergy or digital transformation, the business intelligence, whatever. So try to be simple as possible. When you're explaining some of the topic of your proposal, you can explain this to your mom or your grandmom or your kids. They need to understand at least what you're trying to say. That's the key part. As a program committee member, I have a limited time to read and understand what you want to talk about. This your proposal needs to stand out. When there's kind of a lot of kind of watery words, it's very difficult to understand. Second of all, that it's not about products. There should be a problem that you want to talk about, and there should be some of the proposed solution that you want to talk about, unless it's some sort of panel when you're suggesting some sort of discussion. But this is like a beyond the normal proposal. Usually when you go into the panel, it's already different rules of engagement in this one. And the third one, when you asking for this type of help, you need to be ready to receive honest feedback. Sometimes people submitting a proposal, they want to get a feedback, and after that they're saying, yeah, whatever, I'm not going to change anything. Or even worse, when the conferences, many conferences these days, they provide this kind of, if you're first time speaker, they put this in a CFP page saying, yeah, I'm first time speaker and I'm interested for someone to help me with this. Many people say, yeah, I'm a first time speaker and I'm not interested in coaching. If you're first time speakers, probably it's the mandatory thing. If you want to be successful in this, if you were not forced to do this, if you want to do this yourself and put this in your resume, you need to work on this. There's a talent on writing. Comparing to Rick, I hate writing. However, I do this because I know this is I'm liking of this, and I need to do this more in order to this become less painful for me. Same thing with the proposals. I wrote a number of proposals. I know how sound cool and how to make the proposal stand out, but most important things I always keep in mind: concise, straight to the point, and you will get a successful proposal that will be accepted in conference.
Thank you, Vic, and thank you, Kat. That was the last question that we had. So let's see if we have any live questions. Anyone wants to ask anything, please drop it in the chat or the Q&A function.
I'm so happy that this time we didn't have a question about how to patch KDE to under FreeBSD. So that's usually most important question that people want to ask. But yeah, we're not gonna go into patching KDE under FreeBSD.
Can we offer a hug to the redacted question that we got before we started?
We need to see who asked it. I need to look who got the question. What was it?
The question was, I'm lost.
What would you advise?
I want to send them a Kong Steffi.
Yeah.
We have a live question.
We do have a live question.
All
and
right.
we have a perfect person to and super qualified to answer this.
All right, go Michael.
I thought it was you, Dalia. I thought you can answer this one. No, I will take it.
Yeah, I don't want to take the fame away from you now.
So Kong 3.0 is a gigantic release. There is a lot in there, but there are 10 flagship features. Enough that I actually have to pull up my notes for this. because I can't reel them off from memory.
Can you wrap this, kind of like do this as a wrap and like bring in all these features in?
No, I cannot. I'm going to start with my favorite. So my favorite new feature in Kong Gateway 3.0 is open telemetry support. We've added tracing to the core of Kong Gateway, and that means that as you're experimenting, as you're adding new plugins, as you're adding consumers, as you're adding upstreams, you can see just how much time each part of the system took in your request. So if you see that your database query is taking too long to fetch consumers for a specific credential, you know that's where you can optimize. All you have to do is plug it into any OpenTelemetry compatible provider. I use Honeycomb, and it just magically appears. We've added better support for WebSockets, so you could always proxy WebSocket traffic, but now you can actually write plugins that operate on each frame. You can do WebSocket frame validation. You can limit the size of those payloads to protect your backends or to protect your clients. We've added plugin ordering that Rick mentioned earlier. Previously, all the plugins operated in a predefined order. Now you can say, actually, I want to run rate limiting before authentication because we're getting DDoSed and I want to protect my database. Secrets management has gone GA. So secrets management allows you to use a secure vault like AWS Secrets Manager, HashiCorp Vault to store things like your Postgres password, to store authentication credentials for Redis if you're using it for rate limiting. And Kong Gateway will look those up at runtime rather than having to put these secret values directly in your config. If you've used Kong Manager, that got a big facelift. You got a new design, you got a lot of UX changes. It's just 10 times easier to use. We've got some more boring things like FIPS 142 support if you work with government clients. We've changed how we build our Docker images to use UBI and Slim images to really reduce the potential service for security vulnerabilities. We've updated our docs so that now instead of trying to work out, well, am I running version 0.2 or 3.1 of a plugin, you just select your gateway version and you will always get the right docs. And finally, this is last but not least, we shipped a brand new router. So this gets us some internet points because it's written in Rust. Historically, if you had, say, tens of thousands of routes, whenever we updated the Kong config, things would slow down whilst Kong rebuilt the router indices. With the new router, we only rebuild the rules that are affected. It's called incremental rebuilding. So it means that you can continue handling traffic without any impact, no matter how many routes you have. It also comes with a new DSL. Instead of being instead of defining your routes in JSON format, you can still do that if you want. We have a compatible mode, but you can write this custom DSL that is a lot more flexible. So you can do prefix matching, postfix matching, regular expressions, exact string. You can say, if I'm targeting this host and this header exists, or this host and this other header exists, which you just can't express in the JSON format without writing multiple routing rules, which then leads to longer evaluation time and lower requests per second. So I'm really excited about the new router as well. I just monologued for a really long time, but that's what's new in the 3. Oh, go on, Rick.
Okay.
I just wanted to add one quick one, if you don't mind. The docs comment you made, I think, is really important for people here, especially who might be interested in DevRel. The docs site updates are really big and hopefully helpful for the developers. And I wanted to focus in particular on the new getting started experience, which includes a script that allow you to run Kong Gateway quickly, assuming you have Docker installed. A great way of experimenting with Kong. And if we focused on learning here quite a bit, and I think learning by doing, spinning it up, tearing it down, installing different plugins, all of that is designed to help you kind of get those experiences quickly. So I'm going to drop that link here in the chat, but I just wanted to call that one out in particular.
Michael, I was able to turn the monologue you did into a rap, so I'm disappointed that you didn't.
I look forward to seeing you present it at Kong Summit.
No.
Not necessarily it needs to be rap. It can be Billy Joel's "We Didn't Stop the Fire" style, which basically, reading the change log and do 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 do. So that works just great. I'm gonna try it. I think this is where I can relate. Billy Joel is a great pianist and the performer, and always sold out Madison Square Garden, and I can seem to buy the tickets to see him show live, so it's always sold out.
Rick's just dropped the link to that latest Getting Started in the chat if anyone wants to give it a go.
I don't think you mentioned one of the big 3.0 updates was docs. So if you have ever dug around and struggled to find what you were looking for in docs, give it another try. A lot of work has already gone into that, and it'll continue to improve from there.
Thanks, Scott.
Well, thank you all. Really appreciate your time today. For everyone who's joining us live, this session is recorded. We're going to upload the video on our YouTube channel first thing tomorrow. And yeah, you can always reach out to us with more questions if you have. Like we said, email us at community@konghq.com or devrel@konghq.com anytime. So thank you very much, all of you, Kat, Rick, Michael. Thank you very much. And yeah, have a good evening, good day. See you soon.
Thanks, Dalia.
As always, have a nice day.
Bye.